So last class we got introduced to our 7th assignment, digital painting, with just a really quick video about choosing your photo reference. Today is our work day on it, and it's going to be due next class on the 28th. So when we look at it, you can look at it from the assignments page if you like. I have a lot of helpful materials here for you. So the first is an exhaustive explanation of digital painting, right? Just like I did it of CMYK coloring, just like I did it of digital coloring. So let's go through these really quick. Digital painting is coloring on top of a sketched line. Sometimes it's not even a linear sketch. Sometimes they're just shape sketches that you build up. So since I used Wonder Woman so much for the digital coloring demo, this is a digital painting of Wonder Woman. And notice how there are never clean lines. Like there are sketched lines, but then those lines get overtaken pretty quickly with pixel edges. But the finish can try to look more photorealistic. It can try to look very abstracted and simplified, but it will not have, outlines around it at the end. And I have you handouts in the links that can help remind you, like this one. So this is very different than that lemon digital coloring handout, right? Digital painting starts with a sketch, either a linear sketch like this apple or a shape sketch like this kiwi, right? And then you just build up layers. You can think of them in terms of local flat color, if that's helpful. But because you don't have edges to your shapes, there is no such thing as duotone hard edge or soft edge, right? There's just the base colors and then more and more refinements over the top. What's nice about digital painting versus some forms of traditional painting is that you can perfectly erase. So one very common method is to paint pretty soft, and then just use lassos and delete to kind of cut forms out that are going to be sharp by the end. You can do any kind of finish style you like to your painting. So this was a digital demo I did of a portrait of the author James Joyce, this kind of abstract modernist novelist from Ireland in the 20th century. And from that same painting, which was done with pretty weird colors, right? But this is meant to actually just look like the photograph, be recognizable as James Joyce to anyone who knows what he looks like. So that's what's called a representational finish or a representational style. It's made to represent the shared reality of what that subject matter is. So if you want a picture of your cat that looks like your cat, you're going to be working in a representational mode, right? Both of these fruits are done in a representational style. But even though that's something you can do with the technology, it's a good kind of proof of concept of using digital painting tools, that's not the only type of painting there is out there. So this is an abstract version. This is actually closer to the finished version that I chose for my portrait. This is a non-representational version. Abstraction means it's stylized representation. Non-representation means it's just shapes and forms. It no longer represents anything in the shared reality. It's just the colors and the shapes. And then, of course, you can always composite different things together. Right? It can be multiple things at different places. You want to pay attention to the detail of your source material and then decide which ones are most important. You want to block your colors instead of working with just detailed small strokes first. And while you are working with your brush tool, we're going to use the brush tool as pretty much the only tool we use in Photoshop. We can hold down Option, just like we could with the paint bucket when we were doing digital coloring, and you can use that to steal colors, to pull colors from a palette. So it's, again, just like digital coloring, I find it very helpful to use color reference rather than just choosing colors randomly from the color selector. Here's a past student example of this assignment. They wanted to do Jack Black, right? This was their photo reference. When you only have one photo reference, it's a little limiting. And you can see how that only gave him like the one light source. It only gave him the one expression, which is a little weird with the teeth. But when you get one photo reference, you match that, right? And how is it different than traditional painting? It isn't really, except that at any point you can shift things, you can warp things, you can move things around, right? You have full control of all pixels on all layers at all times, which is not true in traditional painting. So you can see how we just kind of rotated everything, shifted everything. And then I would recommend, like Andy did here, accessories, earrings, glasses, nose piercings, things like that. Those go on top of your finished painting. Don't try to paint those while you're painting the eyebrows and while you're painting the nostrils and all of that, because they're separate. Mechanical objects, accessories should be painted on after you finish all the organic elements. And then this was Andy's self-portrait, right? You don't have to keep the norm. You can go with whatever kind of wild colors and abstraction and proportion changes you like. Now, this is a type of digital painting I really enjoy because I think it makes more use of the digital aspects. So this is digital painting with composited textures. Here it's for creature concepts. Here it's for landscape. So this is using kind of what we learned in our first assignments and using that to augment what we hand paint. It's kind of like collaging with painting. And that's something I might show you as a finishing technique. And then I just show you lots of different digital painting speed throughs, right? This kind of dragon starts with pretty rough sketches and then overtakes them. This one starts with incredibly clean line art, like you would for a digital coloring. And then for some reason, just decides to replace all that line art with digital painting, right? And it's just their process. I would have liked it more as a digital coloring product than the full digital painting, but that's just their process. Here's another one. This is from, I guess it was the other class. I have a big Monster Hunter fan. But you can see how loose the sketch is, how clean the line work is, and then how it all gets replaced by the digital painted texture. All right, so we'll get started. So in the assignment itself, I show you some different approaches. And for this morning class, I'm going to be doing a portrait, and I have lots of portrait examples, right? This is kind of doing a master copy. You can watch that speed through. This is doing a very representational, picture of Beyonce trying to clean up using kind of airbrush effects and really, really soft-edged painting, make her look even more symmetrical and more idealized than the photograph. This is a portrait painting that starts with shape sketching, right, and builds it up, all with pretty rough brushes. This is one that starts with linear sketching, builds it up. And then this is an artist from a past student example. This is Max Reed from a presentation. And I just like how direct this kind of painting is. And Max Reed includes little GIF process shots. Now, how long does each of these steps take? Hard to say. In order to get a good digital painting, it takes several hours. But you can see how it starts with kind of a clear, blocked out composition and then just subtleties added in. Sometimes with props, sometimes not. You can see the sketch. You can see the underpainting, usually with a warm underpainting and then cool details added on top. That's a Rembrandt style technique. On and on. And it doesn't mean it always has to be representational. This is also digital painting. All right. So whatever inspires you, once you've posted these are some traditional paintings by Milton Glaser working on a poster of Aretha Franklin, but this same process could work just as well for digital painting. And then these are some gestural speed paintings, doing some animals, right? Where it's actually uses a brush, but it also uses the lasso a lot to kind of cut out shapes from that were made with the brush. just warms and cools. These are some past student examples. The reference, the painting, on and on and on. All right, so I have posted my, wait, am I in the right class? No, I'm in the afternoon's class. There we go. I'm doing my cat for the afternoon class. For you guys, I'm doing Andy Warhol, right? So I have my photo reference. It's also good to find some inspiration. Would it make sense to use AI to give you inspiration? I think that's one of the empowering examples. I'm not saying it's as good as finding stuff from art history or finding stuff that's out there, but it is a way that can be helpful. So if we use ChatGPT, right, which now has DALL-E, the OpenAI model, built into it, I am not trying to endorse this. I'm just saying how it could be used as the ideation phase. Something to inspire the thing you want to get, not to give you something that works. So I'm going to say portrait of Andy Warhol by Willem de Kooning, which I'm hoping they don't disallow because he's long dead. I think I'm spelling it wrong, but it will probably know. All right, and we'll check back on that, right? But I might be able to use that just as visual reference, because sometimes computers, just like a Google image search, will give you things you weren't expecting, and that can affect your creative problem solving. But the visual reference I used is one of Andy Warhol's portraits of Mick Jagger that he took from his Polaroids. And I have one of his self-portrait Polaroids. Then I have a photo that someone else took of him. I really like this composition, but I want his eyes open, right? Which is why multiple references are sometimes really helpful. All right. The other problem with generative AI, it's energy inefficient, right? So it takes a lot of processing. And when you're using it for free, it takes a lot of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a folder, because we only have today to really work on it for the full class. I'm going to create an assignment 7 folder. I'm done with my poster. And I'm going to add my references into it and my inspirations. And I don't know yet how abstract I want to go. I know I don't want to go fully representational. I just want to have fun with it. I think that's a big part of the creative process, is entertaining yourself. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new Photoshop document. So File, New, and I want to make this, I'm just going to go back to our usual defaults. I'm going to call it SP25. Karl, assignment 7. Digital painting, Andy Warhol. I'm going to make it 8 inches by 10 inches. You know what, I'll go ahead and do it 11 by 14 by 350 pixels per inch, but it needs to be at least 8 by 10. But it isn't any more difficult to make it high resolution than low resolution, so you might as well make it a little bit bigger. So 11 inches by 14 inches by 350 pixels per inch. Then what I'm going to do is bring in my references. So I just put them all into one image, bring that in, shrink it. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to put it into the upper right-hand corner. I'll show you a few different approaches. You can decide what you like, but I think some are better than others, just personally. One approach is this. You take what's called your hero reference. Doesn't matter how high the resolution is. But you use that to do what's called rotoscoping, to paint on top of. So I can onion skin it, take its opacity down. I can lock it. And honestly, this is how a whole lot